Welcome to the program Beyond the Surface. This is where we speak with the leaders of the respective political parties that are contesting in the upcoming regional and general elections. On today's program, we are privileged to have in our presence the presidential candidate of the People's Republic Party, Ms. Phillis Jordan. And next to Mrs. Jordan, we have Dr. Valerie Leung, and she is the Prime Ministerial Candidate, of the People's Republic Party. Ladies, good day and welcome to the program. First, I would like to start by us talking about you yourselves before we get into the crux of the matter. I want to start with you, Ms. Phyllis Jordan. For persons who might not be familiar with you, you are a pastor?
No.
Okay.
I am a teacher of over 40 years, and I've also worked in the NGO community, co-founding with Jennifer Flats, the NGO Operation Restoration that has worked in the area of HIV/AIDS and community building.
Okay. So you've got no background in that area there? You've got no background in pastoral duties and so forth?
Yes. When I started off, when I graduated from the University of Guyana, I worked with the school's ministry into school into varsity as a staff worker, covering the Essequibo Coast, the East Bank, and Georgetown. And that could be seen as missionary work, but just missionary work with the specialization in schools.
In schools.
Yes.
All right. So let's go across to Dr. Leung.
I was born and brought up in Guyana and was married to a Guyanese who unfortunately passed away many years ago in an accident at a young age. I'm the mother of 7, and I was initially, in my teenage years, I studied nursing in Canada, and eventually, after I'd had my children, I went back to school and did my bachelor's and master's and doctorate in law, and was lecturing for a while at the University of Guyana. I was a senior lecturer in the Department of Law. And now here I am in politics. I've been involved in business in Guyana for many years. My husband and I were in aviation and some gold mining. Yes.
How did you make the transition from law and so forth into politics? Where did that all happen? Where did it start?
Well, I made the transition into law. You might ask, how did I go from nursing to law? Some people might say it's one caring and one uncaring profession, but I don't think it should be so. I went into law because of my views about public policy, of what was the types of public policies that were being formulated and implemented in our society that I felt were harmful to the society, and that it was very much needed that people who were God-fearing, people with a worldview that included a belief that there is an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God who watches you and holds you accountable, even when no one else sees, and there will be judgment for what you do or don't do. I felt that there was a great need for people with that worldview to be involved in the formulation and implementation of public policy.
All right. This leads me to my next question. You started out as the presidential candidate of the party, and then here you are, the prime ministerial candidate. Why was that decision made?
Well, I was a dual citizen. I had Canadian citizenship, and I felt that I knew I was going to give it up, I was going to renounce it, but I anticipated that there may be some, what I felt was malicious intervention by GCOM, because I believe the goal is to disenfranchise small parties. And so I thought, rather than risk the entire party being disqualified on my account, I chose to hand it over to Phyllis. I knew she's absolutely capable, qualified, educated woman, a woman of integrity and long-standing involvement in the Guyanese community. She's never lived outside of Guyana. And so I handed it over to her, and that's how that evolved.
Some persons might say, listen, these are the criteria that are set out. Why didn't you not initiate the process a whole lot sooner so that there is no, so that the timing doesn't conflict with what is stated?
Well, I think first of all, those who are still saying, oh, you know, they should lock the three of them up in the same cell and she lied under oath or whatever. I wonder if those people have even read the portions of the Constitution. They need to familiarize themselves with exactly what Article 155, 1A says, and they need to also read the form that candidates sign. In my view, I didn't lie. I am committed to Jesus Christ, and He is truth, and therefore truth is very important to me, and I would not lie. And as to why I delayed it so long, I accept responsibility for that, blame for that in a sense. I think it was a lack of faith, because I kept hesitating because, you know, in the Christian community, we've talked for decades about having a party of God-fearing people, and it's never gotten off the ground. And I really didn't even think, I wasn't sure we would make it to nomination day. And of course, you know, a dual citizenship is something valuable, especially because I have 6 children living abroad. And it's mostly the convenience of being able to visit them without a visa and this and that. Because once you're out of Canada for a certain period, you're no longer entitled to the free medical care and all of that. So that was never a consideration. And yes, I accept blame. I think it was a lack of faith, that I should have done it before. I should have had the faith that yes, we will make it to nomination day.
Are there any regrets now? Any at all?
No, I don't. I don't regret it because I feel it's what God wants. It's God's will, and to have held on to it would have been to love something more than I love Jesus Christ.
You said you were not sure if you would have even made it to nominations day earlier there, but you did. What were some of those roadblocks that, you know, lend to that thought?
Well, I don't want to monopolize this whole thing, but this has been a great learning curve for all of us in terms of, we feel that the electoral laws, which were all made by the 2 main parties, and as you know, our Constitution requires that GCOM is composed of only the opposition and 3 commissioners from the opposition and 3 from the government, which means that essentially when you say GCOM, you are saying APNU and PPP. And that should not be, but this is how it is right now. And we feel, I believe all the parties share this view as well, that they have been working deliberately to disenfranchise small parties. And I think this is one thing they both agree on, is that we need to be kept out. So, for example, nomination day was fixed since September, I'm told. And it was not announced until the 30th of November. To make matters worse, the forms that are essential, that must be filled out by people all over the country and signed by JPs and commissioners of votes, were not issued until the 4th of December. But those forms were actually prepared and ready at the beginning of October. And there's no way I'm going to believe that the 2 main parties who comprise GCOM, who would have known when is nomination day and would have known about those forms, probably helped construct them, design them, and so on, that they didn't have access to that information earlier and have that access to the forms earlier and making use of it. So the small parties were dumped with being given the forms the 4th, and those had to be all filled out nationwide by the 9th of January, and holidays were in between. So it was a almost impossible task.
I want to go across to Mrs. Jordan. Let's talk about the party. You did say earlier to me in our pre-interview conversation that the party started a while ago, but it went dormant for some time, and then it was recently resuscitated. Let's talk a bit about the decision to resuscitate the party.
Well, here we are in 2020, and our first oil was in December. Guyana has struck it rich, and we are conscious that this is not the first time that Guyana has found wealth. Guyana is a wealthy nation. We've had gold, we've had bauxite, diamonds, rich agricultural lands, you know. But for some reason, we have not managed to come out of poverty. And as we look at the 54 years of independence, we know that the reason has nothing to do with natural disaster. We know this. It has nothing to do with paucity of resources. It has everything to do with management. And you know, there's a saying that goes that the sure way for evil to flourish is for good men to remain silent. I think we were all bred on a theology that said that Christians don't get involved in politics. I was bred on that theology. And so even though my father was a politician with the PNC, I was raised by my mother to believe that politics is a dirty game. She didn't want any of her children involved. And so I stayed away as a good Christian. But as I fought from the outside, and I've been fighting social issues 92, I think.
Long time.
She's my partner.
Yeah.
You know, we are not now working together.
Yeah.
We are two warriors working together, you know, for decades. And we know the pain of fighting from the outside and losing. We can't continue like this. The stakes are too high now. We've got to be inside there. We have to guard the wealth and the morality of this nation from the inside, because we know personally that fighting from outside is fighting a losing battle. And so you ask me why? I can tell you why. We failed outside. We've got to get in there. And we've got to guard this patrimony. We have to.
You're coming up against two major giants in the political arena. We can't shy away from that fact. Your chances, even though you've got the things that you believe in, but your chances at making a dent in the political sphere from where you sit, and you've been moving around, you've been going around the country, what are the prospects looking like for you guys?
If these two parties have robbed Guyana for the last 54 years, they have gotten into power, and they have filled their own pockets and the pockets of their friends and family, and left the majority of the Guyanese people in poverty. What makes the Guyanese people think that at this point, when the stakes are highest, that they will act in their interest? Those two big parties, what they need is someone who will be a watchdog between them. Someone who will broker the power. And that's what we intend to do. And I think we are well placed to do it because we're people, God-fearing people. And as God-fearing people, as Dr. Leung said earlier, we honor God. We know He's omniscient, He knows everything. We know He's omnipotent, He has all power. And we know He's omnipresent. His eyes are watching us. And so our accountability, first to Him, and then to the people of Guyana. And so we realize that at this time, 50 years, it's 50 years, it's a very significant time in the history of this country. 50 years is a time of jubilee, a time when freedom is declared. That's the understanding. And we say that our presence on the scene, in spite of all the roadblocks, and there have been many, it's not been easy for a small party, right? But God has allowed us to be here at this time. Why? Because He wants to bring freedom to to the people of Guyana.
Back to that in just 1 second. Let's go across to your manifesto and the visions and the policies that you have. Once elected, you get a seat at the table, or putting it further, you get a chance to govern the nation. What are you proposing to the electorate?
Well, one of our priorities will be the renegotiation of the oil and gas contracts, because they are absolutely unjust. I am frankly surprised that the people who made those contracts, because remember, they were made first by the PPP,
Correct.
and then they were made again, essentially with only one change to the Exxon one, and that was the 2% royalty. All the other terrible provisions remained in place, and then one identical to the Exxon one was made with Tullow by APNU. So it's the two major parties who have made these very, very egregious contracts that are robbing Guyanese people of billions of US dollars. And of course, we have to keep in mind this is a non-renewable resource, and every shipment that goes out, there goes our money. And so it's a matter of urgency for us in this party that these contracts be renewed and Guyanese get what is rightfully theirs.
So we're hearing the government saying, listen, we're getting 50% profit oil. We're getting 2% royalty. They talk about the investment and some other benefits. But you're saying, listen, that's not enough. We should have gotten a whole lot more.
So the royalty is absolutely inadequate. I don't think there's precedent for it anywhere else in the world.
What should we have been getting?
I would say a minimum of 10%.
Minimum 10%.
10%, and perhaps even better, because our oil is good quality. It's relatively inexpensive to access and such. And the quantity that is relatively inexpensive. Our oil is particularly in the Stabroek block, right? And the quality is good. So, but then there's the provision such as we will pay their taxes. That's simply outrageous. That reminds me of, in medieval times when the king was a child and the king did something wrong, another child would be beaten, and that child was known as the king's whipping boy. And it was considered to be a great honor to be the king's whipping boy. Like we are, our politicians are telling us, it's a great honor that Exxon has deigned to even, look for this oil and is bothering to exploit the resource. And we have to be really careful with them, or else they may leave. They're not going to leave. This is too valuable to them, right? So this is a priority for us because, of course, it feeds into all the other things, such as economic development, such as education, the development of our infrastructure, paying off our national debt so that we're more independent and we can exercise our sovereignty and not be beholden to creditors. So, that is a great priority for us.
On this note, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back to continue the conversation here today with the Prime Ministerial Candidate and the Presidential Candidate of the People's Republic Party. Stay with us. On a program Beyond the Surface, and today we're chatting with the presidential candidate of the People's Republic Party and also the Prime Ministerial Candidate. Ladies, I would like to solicit the party's views right now on education. What are your plans for education?
Well, when we became independent in 1966, Guyana had the most robust education system in the Caribbean. But over the years, our education system has suffered from a number of things. We've suffered the feminization of the system. That's a big one, and our boys, as a result, have had a very high dropout rate. And the feminization of the system is a direct result of the low salaries that are paid to our teachers. Over that period, we also nationalized education. We made it free. And with free education, the quality of education suffered. And so what we have on our hands is an education system that has produced a high rate of functional illiteracy. On the books, we are 92% literate. Okay. But in reality, we've got a large percent of functional illiteracy that gets in the way of opportunities, people being able to hold or take up opportunities for employment. It gets in the way of economic development. And so the PRP proposes a massive remediation program, adult remediation program. Policies like No Child Left Behind have damaged our education system. And so we plan to put daycare facilities in place, free daycare facilities in place, where mothers, single mothers can go back to school and pick up from where they left off, get a CXC certificate. We also plan in our education system to remove that urban-rural divide and bring equity in education, where we want to see that the quality of education in Region 5, 6, 1, 2, 3 is equal in quality to what you can get in Region 4.
Right, I want to shift the conversation a bit to some social issues. Let's talk firstly about homosexuality. I'm going to get to the family because this is another area that's big for the party. Dr. Leung, you were quoted as saying that the people in the LGBT community are people that many times need help. They're troubled people. Do you believe that all members of the LGBT community are troubled people indeed?
I do. Because such behavior is simply not normal for two women to be together, two men to be together. That is an unnatural behavior. Even, nature demonstrates that to you. And this party is very firm on its position on marriage, that marriage should be between one man and one woman. You look at marriage, the marriage relationship is set apart from every other relationship, the relationship between siblings, a parent and a child, a co-worker, friends, by three things I would say. One, that it's a contractual relationship. Two, sexual intimacy is, of course I know there's sexual intimacy between, siblings and people who aren't married and animals and humans and all of that, but I don't believe it's legitimate. But you don't expect, for example, you don't expect sexual intimacy between two siblings, but sexual intimacy is a given and has always been from the beginning of time as a part of marriage, and so has procreation. And these are two things that two men and two women cannot do. They cannot have a biological child, and they cannot engage in true sexual intimacy. I don't consider two men sodomizing each other to be sexual intimacy. The anus clearly is not for that. And I don't know what two women do. I've never inquired. I can't imagine what they do. But having rejected wanting a man, they probably use plastic phalluses. I don't know. I don't really care to know. I just know that two women obviously cannot have sexual intimacy, and they cannot have a biological child. And those are two things that are seminal, essential to marriage, to the marriage relationship, that sets the relationship, that particular relationship, apart from every other relationship.
Under a People's Republic Party government, what will happen to the LGBTQ community?
They won't be persecuted, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
That's for sure. Not at all. Not at all. This is essentially a Christian-based value-based party. We believe that all people are equal in value. We don't believe all people are equal in abilities, but we believe they're all equal in value. And the great equalizing force for us is that Jesus Christ gave his life for every one of us. Every one of us. Whether you're LGBTQ, whatever, whether you are a criminal, whether you're an adulterer, whether you're not, that's the equalizing factor for all of us. And that's what makes us of equal value. So even though we don't approve of the lifestyle, it doesn't mean that we are going to advocate for violence or discrimination against them, but we will not say that this is normal or this is natural and this is something that should be embraced. And we will seek, wherever possible, where this homosexual lifestyle has come as a result of wounds that have been inflicted in childhood because of abuse, either physical, sexual, whatever, we will seek to help in those areas.
All right. International laws are gradually changing to adapt to the needs of people, including those of the LGBT community who desires to marry. Do you think, since Ghana being a democracy, will change its law to benefit all, and specifically the LGBT community? Will you support such changing the laws to, given that the international community would push for this? I heard what you said earlier there, but given that this is a direction in which the international community, they're providing funding for Ghana and all of that in all areas, will your position at any point change on this?
Unequivocal, no. We had the opportunity to coalesce with the other small parties.
Correct.
And we turned it down.
Because
on this issue and on others, but this one, our values differed. And the People's Republic Party will not compromise. We are a God-fearing party.
Were you also requested or asked to meet with the Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination, SASOD?
They called me and asked if any of us from this party would be willing to be on either a radio or TV program that they have once a week, and we declined.
And that is because, again, for the values that you stand for.
It's not just the values, but because we've had experience with some of these people, and
some of these people, as
people who are in the LGBT community, and particularly in SASOD, and their attitude is that if you won't go along with them, they can become very abusive and very vulgar. Yes. We've experienced this, people in our community firsthand, yes. Where particularly, I'm thinking in particular of an older woman who is very honored in the Christian community because she has no history of ever, of any wrongdoing with money, with sexual immorality, but anything like that. And said something very quietly, very softly to one of them, and was promptly, loudly, publicly abused with the most vile language. And then the person wasn't satisfied. They went on Facebook and continued all the dirty, vile language. So for that reason, we declined.
I want to wrap the conversation up on asking you to talk to us about family values. I know you've got a heavy emphasis on the family. Talk to us about your plans in that regard. What you're proposing.
Yes. We believe that the family is the foundation of our society. And we believe that as the family, we believe that the nuclear family brings certain advantages for a father and a mother with their children. When children lack father and mother, they are exposed to lots of things that they should never be exposed for. From my vantage point as a teacher, I have to see children living nomadic lives because there are times when a parent is not available, they're sent to Barbies, they're sent all over, they miss a lot of instruction as a result. Also, they're exposed to abuse because the parent is gone for long hours. And we can see that there is need to encourage strong families. And so we will do that. We will encourage strong families by the public policy we make. We believe that public policy can facilitate strong families. By tax shelters, we can encourage people to get married, to stay with their families. Many times men abandon because they feel afraid they can't carry the economic burden of their family. And I do believe that public policy needs to strengthen the family in Ghana, and the PRP will do that. We also recognize that there's a link between family and crime. A lot of these young people who are neglected because of their weak family end up not getting an education. When they don't have an education, as they grow up, they realize that their earning power is diminished. And then the next thing you know, they turn to crime. And so we recognize that we have to heal the family. And the PRP will be placing a great deal of emphasis on examining what the problems are with the Guyanese family and strengthening it, because the family still remains the foundation of society.
I want to ask, what has the response been like from religious bodies towards the party? Are religious bodies embracing the People's Republic Party?
It's a touchy, it's a fine line we're walking, because we recognize that even within the Christian church, there are, in some cases, the heads of denominations, of particular denominations, that are politically aligned already, despite the fact that they know that those parties are violating the laws of the God they say they serve. We can't understand that. We've had much more of a positive response and, just support from the grassroots person. From the person, we have a meeting on the street and we talk to people one-on-one. Just yesterday, we sat amongst, Phyllis and I, we talked with about 20, I would say, pretty rough-looking fellows. And that probably, are quite rough in their language and everything, but they weren't like that when we were there. And, we shared with them, they wanted to know what you're going to do with this country, and they wanted to know about the homosexuality issue and so on. And there we find a lot of support and very favorable to us. Mm-hmm. So we think that our constituency is more the ordinary man.
Knowledge that there are quite a few independent churches.
Yes.
Okay.
I make the emphasis on independent because there are denominations, okay? Like Assemblies of God or Full Gospel. But there are also, if you look at the census, it says there are about nearly 21% independent churches. And we have gotten support from quite a few of the independent churches. Also, I would say that within denominational bodies, people have decided they're supporting the PRP, and they have personally communicated with me. But our constituency, even though it includes the churches, it is not limited to the churches. For example, I have been in the teaching profession, as I told you, for 40 plus years, and hundreds of thousands of children have passed through my hands. And they've personally communicated to me, Miss, if you're in this, Miss, we're with you. So the constituency that will support the PRP does not only constitute the church. It's all our social connections.
But I think the real proof of the pudding will come after March 2, when the ballots are counted and the results are made known. I must say, regrettably, time has elapsed from us. And when we're having these discussions, time is never our friend. But I'm trusting that we get the opportunity to have this conversation again, maybe even after the elections would have come and gone, because you want to maintain that presence, I would assume, out there. Once again, thank you so much for being here with us today and talking with us. We were chatting with the presidential candidate of the People's Republic Party, Ms. Phyllis Jordan, and the Prime Ministerial candidate, Dr. Valerie Leung. Once again, ladies, thank you so much for being here with us. Right. We'll see you next time on the program Beyond the Surface. Goodbye.